Hello everyone and welcome back to Video Editing 1 with Professor Harris. Today we're going through Lesson 13 in the MC110, Fundamentals 2. We're going to be working on creating chroma key effects. Now that we've worked with multi-layer composites, let's explore a common compositing effect, also known as the chroma key. If your project includes footage shot on a green screen so an actor can safely hang from a burning building, or to add talent to a vertical set, this lesson will help you do just that. By the end, you'll understand the key effect types and you'll know how to build an effective chroma key effect. We're going to be working in the MC110 effects project today, and let's look at some of the goals for this lesson. So our goals for this lesson are to identify keying types and components, use the spectrum mat to create a chroma key effect, convert the source monitor into an effect analysis monitor, crop out rigging that appears in the foreground image's frame, and refine a mat's edges. Let's get into it. Okay, before we get right into it, I'm going to explain something really quickly. So when we're talking about chroma key, we're talking about transparencies, we're talking about mats and matte channels. Just know that all of this in the end is to create a green screen effect, to create a foreground and background and generate our transparencies, our matte channels, and so on. So the point of this lesson is to be working with green screen. So don't get confused. Try your best to keep things organized in your head, and that's going to help keep things clear for you. Second thing is we're working in student lesson sequences, and then we can find the 13.1 spectrum mat sequence there, and that's what I have currently loaded in my timeline if you're trying to follow along with me. All right, but let's keep moving. So we have different keying types. So keying means creating a transparency in a foreground image and combining it with a background image to build one composite image. I have a screenshot from the book that should help you kind of understand what we're doing here. To create a transparency, you identify which portions of the foreground, that's the green, will become transparent. This transparent portion is called the matte channel. So we end up with this matte channel here in the middle, and this black area is what we're hoping to create a transparency out of. Media Composer includes 3 options for generating a matte. We have rotoscoping tools, keying effects, and matte keys. Rotoscoping tools use a shape you draw over a portion of an image and animate frame by frame to create the matte. An example might be the animat effect, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Keying effects use color or luminance to generate the matte. So it sources the color. We use green, sometimes we use blue in the production industry to generate that color, and then we can key that color essentially and remove it with effects. And then the last one is matte keys. So this is using a separate grayscale image to create the transparency. For example, a title or an imported animation with an alpha channel. Quick note here on alpha channels. Alpha channels are mattes that an app, for example, a graphic designer or a 3D animation software, could incorporate into the actual media file. The alpha channel becomes the image's 4th channel, the first 3 being the red, green, and blue channels. Media Composer incorporates an alpha channel into its Avid Titler Plus elements that we build here in Avid, such as titles that slide over video or a lower third name key. So what it's saying there, if you're confused, is it has a separate channel that can help you generate these transparencies, and matte keys can help you do that. Not only can they help you do that, but Media Composer also has that option or that feature when we're creating titles with the Avid Titler Plus tool. Quick note here from Avid, creatives often use the terms mask and matte interchangeably, and that is incorrect. A matte is a grayscale image used to identify transparency in an RGB image, red, green, blue image. A mask is the application of a matte. For example, you mask a boom microphone using a matte. So there's that distinction there. If that didn't make sense, just play that back again. And listen to it very closely so you get that distinction, so as we move forward, you're not getting them confused. All right, during this lesson, you'll work with one of Media Composer's keying effects. Media Composer provides multiple keyers in the effect of palettes effect category, but for this lesson, you'll work with the green screen footage, and you're going to create a chroma key effect. And that effect that we'll be working with today is called spectrum mat because it works best for what we're going to do today. It essentially includes powerful parameters for fine-tuning your keys and solving issues such as poorly lit background and color spill. We'll talk a little bit more about what color spill is a little later. But speaking of poorly lit, successful keying depends on planning, especially during the actual shoot. So that means shooting the foreground image in a way that helps generate a clean matte. Again, that matte, remember we were talking about that. And it means isolating the foreground against an evenly lit solid color background, typically a blue or green screen. So what we want, and with this image, the one we're working with today, it's a good example of like not really well done. First of all, we've got stuff in our shot. Second of all, we've got like dark spots on our green screen. And so this makes it much more difficult to just key the whole thing and remove that, make a transparency out of it. So let's look at how to work with the Spectrum Matte and create a clean chroma key from this horrible source shoot image stuff. Let's look at how to work with the Spectrum Matte and create that clean chroma effect, or that clean chroma key. Exploring the Spectrum Matte effect. Good news, you'll use the same techniques that we've been using throughout the other effects lessons, and we're going to apply them here with the Spectrum Matte, and we're going to make those adjustments in the same place we've been making all our effect adjustments in the effect editor. With one exception though, we're going to use two monitors for the Spectrum Matte. Instead of working with a single effect preview monitor in the effects workspace, you'll stay in the editor workspace where we are currently, and we'll use the source monitor, our source monitor will become an effects analysis monitor, while the record monitor serves its visual effect preview monitor role. So we're going to have two different ways of looking at that. I'm going to show you what that's going to look like in a bit here, but let's keep moving. So we can prepare for keying and applying the Spectrum Matte effect by doing the following. So we're going to place the foreground blue or green screen clip on the track above the background segment. So we have our shot here. We have, let's see, what are we looking at? So we already have it set up. We already have our shot. How good Diva Media, whatever. We have this shot above our background shot, and I can switch to my background shot by hitting this little monitor here. So that's already done. It's on our V2 layer. Next, with the editor workspace active, check. We're going to activate the effect mode. This is in our timeline palette or the key that we mapped. So we could check our effect mode. So I'm going to click my little effect mode button here. And then we're going to select the foreground segment in the timeline. So we can select that, and we've got our foreground segment. And we can double click the Spectrum Matte effect in the key category of our effect palette. So let's come over here to our key category. And then we can find the Spectrum. Oh, I didn't mean to close that. Gotta select this, and then I'm going to double click the Spectrum Matte, and it's going to add the Spectrum Matte to our thing. We can see a little key icon appears and everything. Very fancy. All right, now we should see some things change up here in our effect mode or effect editor. And we do see some things change. We get this nice bars, we get some fancy stuff. Now we don't see a keyframe at the beginning and the end. So what does that mean? What kind of effect is this? That's right. This effect uses advanced keyframing because there isn't a beginning keyframe and an ending keyframe. Keep that in mind going forward. Okay, so as you can see on my screen, Spectrum Matte includes several parameters and parameter groups. Once we understand how each group works, we're going to have to clear up a recipe in hand for creating a clean chroma key effect over and over. So we could save this effect once we're done adjusting all our parameters, especially if we're working with the same green screen, and it might be applicable going forward. But you should still be checking things and making sure stuff looks appropriate. I'm telling you things you should already know. All right, so let's take a closer look at how to work with each parameter group. First, we have key color. Key color defines the color you'll remove or key out to reveal the background layer. To sample an effective key color, we're going to click the bypass checkbox to select it and show the foreground without the key applied. So we can select that now. If we select bypass here, we can see we can toggle on and off what it would look like without that key. Let me shrink some of these so we can see our key color. I'm going to expand this now. We can see our key color is currently set to the blue, the same blue that's on her dress. So as I'm clicking this bypass, we can see the image which is beneath that beach image. Oh, that beach image is appearing in her dress region. So now we know what our key color is currently. But we can hover our cursor over the color preview display, blue, next to the key color. So we can come over here. And then with the cursor, when the cursor changes to an eyedropper icon, we can click the color preview display once. So if I click this once, then we see this little color info thing comes up. And then I can hover the cursor or eyedropper over the effect preview monitor and click the blue or green screen to close the subject. Now, when I do this, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But we can see I click that green and boom, instantly the whole shot has changed. Now, let me close this so it's not distracting us. And now we can see what we actually want to. And when I click the bypass, we can see it returns back to that green screen. So we can see what the shot looked like before and after keying the green. Now we can deselect the bypass checkbox if it's selected. So I mean if it and we can just toggle back and forth to see what we got. Like I just said. Cool. So it's that easy, which is awesome. The system samples the background color and creates a transparency channel based on the effect's default parameters. This initial sample can produce dramatic results. However, to produce a professional quality effect, you'll want to refine the key more than what we've got here. So to make this easier, we're going to do the following first. We're going to apply a garbage matte, then we're going to analyze the matte. So let's look at both. Applying the garbage matte or crop. So many blue or green screen shots contain rigging or other set equipment around the shot's edges. So we have this, it looks like a fan or something, it looks like maybe a bounce card. Or at times the background screen doesn't extend to the frame's edges. When this happens, you'll remove the extraneous items called garbage from the background. So we're going to remove this with our garbage matte. Creating a garbage matte can involve drawing complex spline shapes or simply cropping the image as tightly as possible without cutting off any of the foreground subjects that you'd like to include. By the way, a tight garbage matte lets you focus on removing the key color near the subject without having to worry about keying out the entire screen. So we have that option there. To draw and rotoscope the complex shape, you can use the Animatte to do so. So to remove objects along the edges, as we can see on my screen here, we can adjust the crop group's parameters. So let's go to the crop group here, and I can crop from the right side, and as I crop, you can see it just phases that out, and boom, it's gone that easily. Again, like I said, there are Animatte effects where it can it can also remove things, but for simplicity's sake, we can just crop it here by cropping our Spectromatte with our crop group at least. Whatever method you use, we're going to mask out the garbage early in the keying process so that we avoid wasting time when we're trying to perfect an area that we could easily cut out later. So if you want to work more with rotoscoping with the Animatte effect, it's covered in the Media Composer Professional Editing 2. That's the MC110 course. I don't teach that one yet, but hopefully will eventually, so you can catch that there. Once you take out the garbage, you're ready to refine the key. So to help you do this, you'll use two options in the matte analysis group. Excuse me. All right, now we're moving into matte analysis. What if you could view the matte before or while you refine the key? You can. When working with the Spectromatte in the editing workspace, the left monitor, which I've been covering this entire time, should be, and it's not working that way. So, okay, but let's back up. When working with the Spectromatte in the edit workspace, the left monitor becomes the effect analysis monitor. You can display a grayscale matte channel, alpha, or spectrograph. For added flexibility, you can view either the matte channel or the spectrograph in the effect preview monitor as well. Why isn't this working? Maybe if I switch to my effects workspace. No, because then this populates that. This should be interesting. It's not working the way that it says it's supposed to. Okay, so I figured out what was going wrong here. So, and the book talks about this too, but we can click the Show Alpha or Spectrograph checkbox underneath our matte analysis. So if I click this drop down, I can show my alpha and my spectrograph here in my effect preview monitor, or I can click this little drop down source monitoring, which is off currently, and we can set alpha to the source monitor, and or we could set it to spectrograph in the source monitor. So this is what we're supposed to have been seeing before. It just is, I think, by default turned off because I haven't quite worked with the green screen on this computer yet. So for your reference, make sure in your mat analysis that you have that set appropriately. Okay, after we select a key color before making refinements, you'll want to call up the alpha in the source monitor to analyze the matte channel's details. So let's pull up the alpha. Now we have our alpha, and we can see the part that's been created, what's been created as a transparency. So we're going to be using the left, which is the alpha, and the composite, which is on the right, to analyze our key. The white areas in the matte represent the foreground opaque areas. Black represents the transparent keyed out portions. Your goal is to create a solid white foreground and a solid black background. Zooming in can help you better analyze your initial key. So if we zoom in on this monitor, I can hit Command L. We can zoom in a little bit. I think if I hit Option Command, I can drag around and we can see how sharp or unsharp our job is on this. Let me zoom back out with Command K. Again, that's Command K and Command L. And we can even see that part of it's cropped. Remember, we cropped that right side to get rid of that garbage. So there's that. Okay. What else? We can select the monitor with the matte channel alpha display. So we've got that set up. We can zoom in by pressing Control Alt Command L. I did that. And then we can pan around in the display, and we can hit Control. Yep, I just said that. We can zoom out by press. Yeah, okay, all right, I just said all that. Okay, so when analyzing the matte, be sure to scrub through the clip and look at how the key changes with shot movement. So let's scrub through our clip here in our effect preview. We can see how it changes, and I think it's actually doing a really good job. Little bit of problems, but that's generally really well done. And I just arbitrarily selected a portion of the green screen. It seems to have done a pretty good job. As you analyze the matte channel, note any black pinholes or gray shadows in the foreground subject's white area and the white noise in the background. You'll fix these to create a clean effect, or clean key, I should say. Once you analyze the matte channels, you use the spectrograph as a guide while refining the key. To do this, we can switch the matte analysis menu to spectrograph in the source monitor. So if we come up over here, let me drag this back up. We change this back over to our spectrograph, and now we've got this color screen. And this looks really complicated and weird, but don't freak out. I'm going to explain it to you in parts. Let me pull up a screenshot from the book so I can be a little bit more precise on this. The spectrograph is a color wheel style swatch that represents the color space from the SpectraMatte effect. Refer to the numbers in the image as you see on screen as I identify the different features. Number 1. Like a color wheel, the swatch includes various hues displayed in circular fashion and saturation that increases from the center, which is gray, to the perimeter. Number 2, we have the dark wedge in the spectrograph. This shows the range of colors used to generate the matte, which is green in our example. So notice the wedge grows wider towards the perimeter, keying out the relatively broad range of highly saturated colors from the sampled key color, which is green. Number 3, we have the vector scope style display, shows the foreground image distribution of the color values. For our example, a concentration of green values, which is again our key color, and other colors from the foreground subject that we want to retain. What did I just say? Essentially, these colors dictate what is and isn't being included as far as generating our transparency when it comes to working with the spectrograph. So let's keep moving. If you're confused by that at all, just play that section back again. But essentially, again, this color area is making adjustments, and we can adjust this. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second to increase or decrease the amount of transparency, what it is, what colors are actually sourcing to create our transparency. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Ideally, green and blue screens consist of well-lit, highly saturated colors that rarely exist in nature. In other words, color values that appear at the perimeter of the swatch that you can easily key out. In reality, you'll often face poorly lit green screen or blue screens with low saturation hue values that fall on the borderline between what you want to key out and what you want to retain. Parameter adjustments in the effect editor address issues, like we have them here. Where was I? Address issues that this introduces. For example, the key color, artifacts, and foreground subjects. To refine the key, you'll start with the chroma control group and work down to the spill and matte processing groups. Tip here, as you familiarize yourself with each parameter, make bold intentional adjustments to see how the parameter affects your image and the spectrograph. Then, as you refine the effect, you can make more subtle back and forth slider adjustments to find the sweet spot. So what am I saying? When I'm making adjustments here, I'm going to make radical changes to see how it actually affects my effect preview, my spectrograph. And then I can make minor adjustments to refine that going forward. Okay, chroma control. Picking the key color sets the initial key and the spectrograph's wedge position around the color swatch. So where this actually ends up on our big color wheel thing here. The chroma control group further defines the size, shape, and position. Initially, you'll start with the top of this group and work down, then you'll tweak parameters as needed. Let's explore how the chroma control group parameter works. So let's open our chroma control. Let me move this to a more predominant place on our screen, close to here, because this is what we're going to be adjusting. So I'm going to open my chroma control dropdown. We can see we have tolerance, key sat line, key saturation, inner softness, outer softness, alpha offset, and opacity. So let's get into it. All right, so tolerance. Tolerance controls the range of hues to key out, and in the spectrograph defines the wedge's width or spread. Lower value decreases the hue range and wedge's width, while higher value increases the hue range and the wedge's width. So let's look at that now. Our default is 90. Let's just keep that in mind. So if I move this, we can see things are happening. If I yank this over to the right, we can see lots changes. And now we can make finer adjustments to make this more accurate. So her blouse thing, her transparent blouse thing, I believe is supposed to be more blue. So if I slide this further to the right, that's actually looking better, but I don't want to blur out any of the foreground elements per se. I want to still keep it nice. So I don't want it to be green. So I think I will go, we'll go clear up to 160, and we'll leave it there just for now as a reference. So again, tolerance controls the range of hues to key out, and in the spectrograph defines the wedge's width or spread. So let's look at how that looks. I have an image here from the book that can help you understand essentially what's happening here. Again, our tolerances adjust the range of hues included in the key. So that is the change that's happening here. This area is getting darker or bigger or lighter depending on which direction we drag it. Awesome. Too narrow and portions of the background appear in the matte channel. So if I bring this down from 160, portions of the background start to reappear, and too wide and portions of the foreground elements become transparent. Things that we might not want to become transparent do. So again, I'm going to leave that 160 for now. All right, let's keep moving to the next thing, which is what's after tolerance. We have the key saturation. And key saturation defines where low saturation starts to key out the wedge's center point location. Increase key saturation to shift the entire wedge away from the swatch's center and restore keyed out foreground elements. Let's see what that looks like. So this is our key saturation. Let me close my tolerance window here. So key saturation is shifting the center point left and right, kind of diagonally though. So let's see what key saturation looks like when I make radical adjustments here. And we can see all kinds of weird things start to happen. Yeah, you see our whole screen comes back in. So again, we're shifting that point on a diagonal, and it's making those changes. We don't want to see that. So I'm going to leave this clear all the way down to the left at 0 because I think our key saturation is good. All right, let's move on now to key sat line. Key sat line determines the minimum saturation level for the key color range. Increasing the value cuts off the wedge's point, excluding the unsaturated colors from the key to retain them in the foreground subject. What did I just say? Let me pull up the image for you so you're not lost. Close our other images because we don't need that open. This is key sat line. So key sat line is chopping off the top center of our little wedge here, and it's changing again obviously how this is going to look. So using the key sat line to fine tune the threshold for removing, you're going to use the key sat line to fine tune the threshold for removing the image's low saturation regions. That said, keep in mind that raising the key sat line may not improve the key. For example, it can sometimes produce a halo effect around hair. So let's move our key sat line now. Slide this around. We can see our foreground is almost entirely returning. If I drag it back, it goes back to transparent. Again, we can see that white wall behind her is coming back in. So I'm going to leave this at 0 because it was already a good position to start with. All right, next we have our inner softness and our outer softness. So these offer subtle control over semi-transparent areas in the foreground near the wedge's edge, the areas that appear feathered in the spectrograph. To more clearly see how the inner or outer softness affects the foreground, we can refer to the matte channel, or alpha, as you fine-tune the semi-transparent areas shown on screen. So let's change this back to the alpha. So we'll go here, we'll change this, we'll go to alpha monitor. And then as I increase and decrease my inner softness, let's see what happens here. Aha. You can see that white wall returning again. So we'll adjust this so it's still transparent. I don't want to be fully transparent because this is still cloth. I should still see the cloth kind of behind her. Let's try the outer softness now. We can see now she's entirely disappearing because we're really making strange adjustments. Let's see what this looks like though in our in the spectrograph. So if I adjust the outer softness again here in the spectrograph, what is that doing? Again, that's increasing that dark region. And yeah, I don't know. There we go. I am not the master of green screen. I did not work with a lot of green screen stuff when I was in school and or after school. So green screen isn't 100% my strong suit, but I do understand enough to be dangerous. So, and I'm hoping after this lesson you too understand enough to be dangerous. Let's look a little bit at the reference image for this. So we can see again the darkness creeping in. Inner and outer softness provides subtle control over the semi-transparent areas. So helps us so nicely. Once you've achieved a solid black background with our matte channel, so let's change back to our alpha. Once we achieve a solid black background, the white matte, hold on. Once we've achieved our solid black background, white matte channel, and desired results in the semi-transparent areas, you're ready to address spill and the subject's edges. So we've essentially made all the adjustments that we'd want to in our chroma control, and now we have a solid white and black differentiation. I think I think this is good. We've got it where we want it right now. All right, so let's move on to spill then. Spill refers to the key color. So we have our own work grip. Spill refers to the key color tinting foreground areas. This occurs when light reflects off of our blue or green screen and spills onto the foreground subject. Spill suppression replaces the spill color with another color. The spill group includes two parameters. Let's open it up now. We have spill angle offset and spill saturation. Spill angle offset changes the spill's corrections spread to neutralize the spill. Keep in mind that large adjustments usually result in over-correcting the foreground image. So, for example, causing green spill to look magenta. So let's drag this around and see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks horrible. So we can make magenta looking colors if we overcorrect our spill. This shot really doesn't have that much spill at all, but I'll slide this to the right just a tad till she turns magenta. I love how it just goes rapid green out of nowhere. Now we'll bring it back to normal levels. Again, there's really not a lot of spill, but I think I'll increase to like maybe around 4. All right, and then spill saturation determines the threshold where spill suppression begins. A lower value suppresses more key colors than less saturation. So a higher value suppresses values that match the key saturation value, the chroma control group, if you're interested in that. If you leave the key saturation at 0, spill saturation provides little effect, which is why we are seeing such little effect. So if I increase my spill saturation to 100, and then I start dragging around this bad boy, again, we can see things start to turn magenta, but we can make finer adjustments with our spill saturation turned up. So let's keep our spill saturation around 20 for now, and I'll adjust this as such. I don't want it to turn pink, obviously. She's turning a little bit magenta there. Let's keep it around 11, 10 or 11. All right, so we'll keep that at 10. And let me show you what this looks like as far as the book is trying to reference. So we have our spill saturations moving our center point, and our angle offset. These are our angle offsets as we're adjusting the, obviously, our spill angle offset. So that's what all of this is looking like when we make adjustments to it. All right, so finally, you'll refine the mat's edges. So now that we've got all our stuff set up, we've got it looking a little bit better. It looks a lot better if we're being honest. Again, I'm not the master of green screening, but let's move on now to matte processing. Matte processing. The edges are often the most difficult area of keying. Okay, not often, always. So you use the matte processing group to blur the matte, and here's how we'll do that. So we'll select one of the following from the matte blur menu. By the matte blur menu, it means going to matte processing, our matte processing group, and then the matte blur option comes up. So we'll select one of the following from the matte blur menu, which is this. We have blur, erode, and dilate. Erode is the default, and we can see that that was already selected, but blur, the top one, adds blurring to both sides, inside and outside the matte edges. Erode adds blurring inside the matte edges only, and dilate adds blurring outside the matte edges only. Adjusting the matte blur slider makes the matte fit better around your subject. So let's start with erode, and we'll make some dramatic adjustments here. We can see how it's blurring. Again, erode adds blurring inside the matte's edges only, so it makes it a little bit more hazy on the edges. We looking for something more sharp or more soft? I think we are looking for something a little more sharp. I'm going to leave that at 0. Let's try blur, just in general. Blur adds blurring to both the inside and outside, and we'll see what that looks like. Now we're just entirely blurring our subject. This is where we get like the 90s ethereal effect, where it's like, oh, you have to go to the fortress and kill the dragon. So we don't need that. We're going to keep that at 0. And then dilate, again, adds blurring to the outside matte edges only. So we can adjust that. And again, we get more of that ethereal 90s green screen effect. Let's switch back to erode. And I think I'm going to leave it right now. Is that better? The cloth is behind her, isn't it? This goes down and around, so there should be a little bit of haze. It shouldn't be completely transparent, because if I turn this up, that disappears over her hip here and by her leg. So we don't want that. We're going to leave that at 0. So now we're going to make much adjustments here, but combining all the fundamental adjustments covered in this lesson will provide a high-quality composite involving our blue and green screen endeavors. Quick note here from Avid, this lesson introduced you to fundamental chroma key workflow. The Media Composer Professional Editing 2 MC110 course covers how to handle complex keying scenarios. So with that, let's sum up the Spectromat recipe. So first we activate bypass to select the key color and deactivate the bypass so we can see what we're actually doing, what we're going to be doing to our effect. Then we'll select the alpha in the source monitor menu option and analyze the matte for white artifacts in the background and black artifacts in the foreground. So we're going to be looking for scraps, things that shouldn't be here when we're looking at it. Then we're going to select the Spectromat in the source monitor menu option and increase the tolerance to key out artifacts in the background or restore foreground elements that might have been removed. So again, that's our matte analysis, and we would change this to our spectrograph. Now we got our spectrograph. We can make our adjustments, and we can always see them again in our effect preview monitor. Number 4, we're going to adjust key saturation and key sat line to restore any remaining keyed out foreground elements. Number 5, we'll use the matte channel alpha as a guide, adjust inner and outer softness to achieve desired results in semi-transparent areas. Number 6, we'll set the spill group parameters to neutralize key color spill on foreground elements. And then number 7, we'll adjust matte processing group parameters to clean up the edges. Now that we have the magic recipe, it's time for you to go into the 13.1 exercise and start working with this stuff yourself. I'm going to quickly pull up that list again for you for your reference. And here is that list to help you as you go through that exercise. Again, these are the 7 crucial steps to creating an effective blue and green screen background. Thank you guys so much for watching. To my YouTube viewers, like, comment, subscribe. And to my students, I will see you guys back in the classroom. Bye-bye. Post-production, Professor Harris here. I realized only now that I never played the video through. So, here you go. That is all.